All right, so I'm pretty excited for this video today. I have a feeling that this is going to be a long one. I may even have to split it into two parts. We'll see. But ever since I felt called to start this YouTube channel, I always ask my guides what it is they want me to bring through, like what is my next video going to be? And then I just kind of wait for the inspiration to come to me. And this week, I had the idea to create this video, and as soon as it came through, it just what I wanted to bring through within this just came through so strongly. And I was so excited to do this because I honestly don't have too many people in my life that I can really talk about these things with, nor would I ever really sit down with them and kind of share this in somewhat of a linear way. And so this is exciting for me to kind of look back on my experiences and kind of put the pieces together. And since it has been about a year, a little bit over a year since the last time I've sat in ceremony, I've had quite a bit of time to kind of integrate and reflect on the experiences that I've had over the last few years. So without further ado, this is my experience with ayahuasca. So I just want to preface this by saying that I don't, even if ayahuasca is not something that you would ever consider doing, it's not something you've ever wanted to do, I hope that through sharing my experiences with it, I will be able to bring to you some really profound lessons and wisdom that I've gained through these experiences that hopefully are resonant for you as well. And with that said, I am not one of those people who thinks that like ayahuasca is for everybody and that we should be trying to like increase accessibility to it or anything like that. I actually feel that it's not for everybody, and especially not right now at this current point in human evolution. Maybe further down the road, as we continue to evolve and awaken and expand as a consciousness, more and more people are going to be drawn to experiences like this. But I really think that unless you are genuinely called to this experience on a spiritual level, it's probably not the best idea for you to do it. And I can understand why people have bad experiences and why there's things can go wrong with it. And I wouldn't encourage anyone to do it because they feel pressured to, or because it's like the cool or popular thing to do. I think that it kind of takes away from the medicine when the medicine becomes commodified, or when we lose reverence for its sacredness and for the sacred cultures and practices around it. And, you know, if you look at the history of the medicine, in the Amazonian tribes, they were not administering the sacrament to anyone and everyone. It was the shamans that drank, and people would go to these shamans and go to these healers for healing, and the shaman would drink the drink and bring through the healing that that person was needing or seeking. And so it's kind of like this very westernized experience of the medicine to, you know, kind of want to drink it yourself and to like have everything, you know, is like in the extreme. Like we're searching for these kind of like extreme experiences. And I'm not putting myself in some separate category from that. Like I think there's definitely a part of me that is drawn to experiences that push my boundaries, that excite me, you know. And but I do on a spiritual level feel that I was very much called to this work and prepared for this work when I did step onto this path. So yeah, I think that if it's something that you feel called to or you've considered, it's worth taking your time and and exploring the reasons why you're feeling called to it before you actually step into it. So when I was first introduced to ayahuasca was probably about, I'd say like 12 or 13 years ago. I had just started my yogic journey, and my teacher, who I practiced with a lot, he had done ayahuasca a few times, and he would tell me all about his experiences every time he went. And I just knew when he would talk about it, I knew that it was something that I was meant to do. I knew that one day I would experience that. And something that he used to tell me was that the experience always felt to him like he was dying. And I think that at that point in time, I still held a lot of fear around death. And so I think that the idea of confronting that fear was very daunting to me, and that I would say was the aspect of it that really scared me, that created like a feeling of fear around the experience for me. So over the years, I knew I wanted to do it, and that feeling of wanting to do it and it coming into my awareness was like growing stronger. And I ended up, crossing paths with a couple other people who had done it. At this point in time, it was really not that common to know people that had done it. And all the people I knew who had done it, they had all gone to Peru. They had gone on like the hero's journey. They had, gone deep into the jungle and done that whole trek to like seek it out. And I think there's something also really admirable in that. And so the next couple people I encountered who had done it, they had similar experiences. Like when they would share their experiences with me, like they had similar confrontations around death. And but by this point I was now teaching yoga, and I was going through like my own process of awakening and transformation on a much deeper level. And I ended up doing a training that was like a tantric training, and we explored the whole like part of one of the sections of the training. One of the modules was all about death and kind of like the Taoist perspective on dying, and like practicing death and deeper understandings of death. And it's interesting because I had been using plant medicine like cannabis to kind of simulate these experiences of practicing death and deep meditation without anyone even teaching that to me or telling me about that. And when I did this tantric training, I was like, wow, I've already kind of been practicing this, like putting myself into such like a deeply almost like catatonic state where like my consciousness could kind of separate from my physical being, and I could just go into these like extremely deep states of meditation and healing. And so I'd already been practicing this stuff. And then I started to learn more about it. And this kind of helped me to work through some of the fears I had around it and to understand it a little bit more deeply. And around this same time, I had become close with this woman who had done ayahuasca quite a bit. And she often sat in ceremony at this place in Joshua Tree. And so for me, that the idea of being able to do this like a little bit closer to home really resonated for me. Like, as much as I would love to say that I'm one of those people who could like trek off into the jungles, I don't know if I really am that person. Like, maybe under the right circumstances, but being able to be close to home and to have my things and to know that I'm going to like eventually be going home to my bed to sleep in my bed and to process like that felt correct for me. That felt like the correct first time experience. So we had made plans to do it in 2019. And as it was getting closer to the ceremony date, my intuition, like very strongly, was telling me that it wasn't the correct time for me. So I ended up backing out of the ceremony. And one of the reasons why I did was because I was just getting this feeling that it was going to be a lot of masculine energy. And this was like another fear that I needed to confront. And this is going to come, it's going to be a full circle moment here that's going to come up again later in the story. But at this particular point in time, the thought of being in a space surrounded by a lot of men in a situation where I would feel vulnerable felt unsafe to me. And so I backed out of it. And lo and behold, my friend still ended up going. And her and this other woman who had gone together, they ended up being the only women in this ceremony. And this was also prior to COVID. And so the amount of people that they were having in these ceremonies was like a lot of people. And so my friend who had gone, she told me that it was not a great ceremony for her. There was a lot of like really intense energy and things going on. And she was really glad that I didn't end up coming because she didn't want that to be my first time experience. So after that, about a year goes by, 2020 happens, and we decide towards the end of 2020 that we're going to go. We're going to go sit in ceremony. So we book a ceremony in November. And so I go through the whole process, like the months leading up. I start doing the dieta. I'm taking the whole process like extremely seriously. Like I'm detoxing from everything, like cutting out caffeine, I'm like going so hardcore with like every single thing that they recommend that you do. Cutting out social media, just clearing my clearing my energy, preparing my vessel. And lo and behold, like 2 days before we're supposed to go to ceremony, the governor of California, he ends up doing one of those lockdown orders. And so the people that run the church where they hold the ceremonies, they didn't want to put, the church at risk or anybody else like at risk of kind of getting in trouble or having to deal with any of that. So they decided not to do the ceremony. And I was, of course, devastated. I had put so much effort into like this whole process of preparation and whatever, but we still ended up going down to Joshua Tree and having a nice weekend or whatever. But it was definitely disappointing. And then they weren't able to open back up and start serving again until February. So the first ceremony that they offered once they were able to open up again, we signed up for that. Like we pushed into that ceremony. And so it was February 5th, I believe, of 2021. We end up going to my first ceremony. So my first ceremony, I'm trying to think of where to start with this. Okay, so we're in the temple and we're all sitting in a circle, and you go around and say what your intentions are, whatever, do that whole kind of thing. And then they come around and they ask you how much you want. And so basically, on a scale of 1 to 10, like 10 is the maximum dose, and then 1 is the least amount. It's like, how much do you want within that scale? And so I'm pretty sure I said a 6.5. Okay. I don't know why. I think that's what I said though. So they bring me my sip, and everybody always says that like it tastes bad or whatever. So I'm like preparing myself for that. And I'm sitting with the medicine and I'm just repeating over and over, please be gentle with me. Please be gentle with me. Like I was so afraid of it being this like violent experience. And I think part of that comes from the fact that the people who I had known who had done it before were mostly men, other than my one girlfriend. And I just think men tend to have more of like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't make a generalization. Maybe the men that I had spoken with, they had just had more of like an aggressive experience with the medicine. So I don't know. So I'm just like, please be gentle with me. Please be gentle with me. I'm so nervous at this point. Like I hadn't been nervous really at all leading up to going or anything. But in this moment when I was sitting with the drink, I was so nervous and I don't know. So we end up drinking the medicine, and I actually didn't mind how it tasted. I thought it tasted good. It tastes kind of like an earthy licorice kind of flavor. So we drink the drink, and then we're just sitting and everyone's just silent, and we're just sitting kind of in meditation, and I could feel some things happening in my body. Like I could definitely feel the effects of it in my system. But I'm just kind of sitting there, and they start playing the bowls. So the place that I go to, they do sound healing. It's a sound healing ceremony. And so they have like a ton of different incredible instruments. All of the guardians and the shaman, like they're just it's like it's one of the most magical experiences ever, because they're all so talented and they're all what they're bringing through. So like, the guardians and the shaman, like they're drinking also, like they're part of holding space is part of being in the experience as well. And so what they're able to channel through themselves through that experience, it's like unbelievable. Like it's absolutely mind-blowing how talented and incredible they are. So they start playing the bowls and whatnot, and I end up just laying down on my side, and I'm like closing my eyes down, and I'm like, am I sleeping right now? Like, am I falling asleep? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, am I supposed to go to sleep? Like, and my mind just starts like going crazy, and it's like this voice in my head just takes over of like, I can't believe that you're failing at this experience. Like, I can't believe that you couldn't even, do this right. Like, this experience is, you've disappointed yourself in this. And like, just this voice, like Kant was so disappointed in myself and like frustrated with myself and just hard on myself. And so I get up and I go outside, and I'm just outside, and we're in the middle of the desert. It's pitch black, and I'm just looking at the stars. I'm sitting outside, and I just have this moment, like this realization where I'm like, that voice, that voice that's telling me that I'm failing at this, or I'm not good enough at this, or I can't have the experience that I came here for, that voice has to go from my life. Like, I don't need to listen to that voice. I don't need to allow that stronghold within my mental space anymore. Like, it's time to let that aspect of myself go. And so I go inside, and I'm kind of like shocked to have had this realization in a way. It was like this awareness of myself to a depth that I hadn't yet experienced, like really being able to see myself and the process of how my mind was working in a way that I hadn't before. So I go back inside and I sit back down, and the guardians come around and they're like, how are you doing? Do you want to take a second sip? So I'm like, I might as well, like when in Rome. So I take my second sip, and I think I had done about the same amount the second time. So I take the second sip, and after the second sip, it was like I experienced the entire spectrum of human emotion. Like, every single facet of what it means to be a human being came up for me in some capacity. And it's like some of the notable things, like I will say from that ceremony, I remember at one point laying down, and one of the guardians, his name is Isaac. He is one of the most phenomenal singers I have ever had the pleasure of coming in contact with in my entire life. He starts singing, and his voice when he sings, it's like an angel. It's literally like an angel. I don't know how else to describe it. And during that song, when he was singing, every woman in the room just starts hysterically crying, just bawling. And I knew what we were crying for. And this is the cool thing about sitting in a ceremony, in a group, in a collective, is that you're not just processing your own energy, you're processing the energy of the group. And so I knew in that moment why we were crying. And we were crying for just the pain that the feminine has endured, like at the hands of the masculine. And like this, for me personally, it was like this feeling of like loving masculine energy. And up until that point in my life, I won't say I hadn't experienced a lot of it, but I would say that like it's always been tempered in some way, or like, the good that I had experienced had been so overshadowed by the horrible that I had experienced. And so it was just this reminder of like the beauty of the masculine and the love that the masculine is capable of, and what it feels like to be held in this beautiful, like unconditionally loving vibration. And like, we were just crying for like those aspects of ourselves that had been so hurt and violated. And it was just really beautiful. And after he stopped singing, it was like we all realized in the room that like all the girls had just been like completely losing it. And then one person starts laughing, and then everybody's laughing. And it's like, that's the thing with ayahuasca, is that like you just become this conduit, this vessel for like energy just moving through you. And it's like, it's coming up and out and through you in so many different ways. So like the concept of like purging, it's gonna, you're gonna purge through laughter, you're gonna purge through tears, you're gonna purge through throwing up sometimes, you're gonna purge, like it's just allowing, it's like really just allowing all of this energy to move. And if it needs to be released in some way, then you just have to allow it to come through you. And you honestly feel so much better after you do purge, because it's like something that needed to make its way out of you. And during this first ceremony, I did have some people come up that I needed to address like some healing with, and kind of see those connections. It's like getting like a bird's eye view. So it's like you get to like zoom out on your life, like you're kind of like hovering above your life, and you can kind of like look at it and see it and be like, okay, I understand why that person acted that way, or like I understand the dynamics between us both, and I forgive them and I forgive myself. And so that was pretty cool. And then one of my favorite parts of that first ceremony was um that just the group collective that we were in, I think was a really special first time experience. So it was me and my friend Erica, and then three of our other friends were with us. And so that's how many people? One, two, three, four, five. Five of the people in the ceremony were like people we knew in our group. And then there's like the shaman and several guardians. And so that really only left room, because this was post COVID. And so they were not allowing more than like probably 15 people in the room. And so the rest of the people in the space, there was maybe like five-ish other people. And I think it was mostly women. And the energy was just so positive and uplifting in that ceremony. And like I said, it's a sound healing ceremony. And the songs that they were singing were so like jovial. And like there was a point when we were all singing, and everybody, and it was like, it was so fun. Like it, compared to the other ceremonies that I've sat in, that was the only time that it's ever been like that, where everyone's like singing all together. And it was like, there was like a very much like a jovial community kind of feel to it in that way. So I feel blessed and lucky that that was my first time experience, because it was so fun and it was so joyful, and my heart was just exploding with love. Like I literally just got the chills right now, and now I'm also wanting to cry. But it was just this feeling, like this feeling love just overflowing from my heart in a way that I had never felt really before. So that was my first time experience. And usually, a lot of people, like when they go down to Peru or whatever, or Costa Rica, and they go on these kind of retreats, it's kind of the traditional experience to sit like multiple days in a row. So I don't know if that's really for me. Maybe, like I said, one day I will try to experience that or will experience that. But for me personally, like one day is plenty. And then I'm ready to like go home and sleep in my bed and process the experience that I just had. And so we sat for the one night, and then, you can stay there and it's a beautiful space. And the next day you get up in the morning and we do what's called ceremony, and we talk about like our experiences or whatever. And it's actually really cool to hear everyone else in the room's experience, because you're like, you see that energy really is, we're all connected, right? So like the the energy that you were feeling was like being shared by the energy in the space, and like it's a collective experience, and so that was really cool. And then go home, sleep it off, process the experience, sit with the experience. But I knew that I knew I wanted to go back again soon. I knew that I wanted to like go back in and go deeper. So we ended up planning to go again in May. So that first ceremony was in February. And so now, March, April, May, 3 months later, we decide we're going to go again. So we book the ceremony, we go. And this time, when we sit down and they come around and they ask how much we want, I'm like, full send, like, give me the 10. I'm going to go in. I'm going hard, because now I wasn't scared of it anymore. It's like that first time experience, it's just the fear of the unknown, right? Like you're like, I have no idea. No one can ever really explain to me how I personally am going to feel in this situation. And so you just have a lot of fear of the unknown. You don't know how you're going to react, how it's going to go. And so the second time, I didn't have that same fear. And so I'm like, let's go hard. I'm going all in. So I take the 10 and I lay down, and it literally hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I felt like I was catapulted through the universal like womb space, birthing into like cosmic energy. Like I completely stopped existing as myself. I had like profound realizations of like the eternalness of my soul separate from like my ego, and that like my soul has always been me in every incarnation. And I kind of like saw the way that time is like layered, all happening like simultaneously in different like realms. And it was like really going 1,000,000,000 light years a second through just like cosmic infinite existence. Like I don't really know how else to explain it. But while this is happening, my body is struggling, okay? Because my body wants me to come back, right? And this is where that feeling of dying comes in. And I understand why people say it feels like you die, because I do think in a way that that's what it is. Like you're experiencing your consciousness separate from this incarnation. And so your body holds resistance around that. And so I threw up a lot through that experience. I felt very dizzy. So, like, my physical vessel was having a struggle through that. So finally, this goes on. I don't even know how long, like, the concept of time is like, I have no idea. But it's like I basically, like, all of a sudden just boom, like landed back in reality. It was like I was back in my body. Like I've never felt more grounded and present in my entire life. It was like I opened my eyes and I was like, just boom, I'm here. And it was right at that time, like I sit up and I get my bearings and they come around and they ask again, how are you doing? Do you want your second sip? And so I'm like, I might as well, right? You know, like, what am I going to not take a second sip? Like, I'm feeling fine now, you know? So I asked for my second sip. I don't think I did a full 10 again. I think I told them that I just wanted to I didn't want to go like crazy deeper, but I wanted to maintain like how I was feeling. So I take my second sip, and after the second sip in that ceremony, I felt like my body was able to relax. And so I was able to kind of just lay down on my back and like close my eyes down. And I just went on this kind of like, was shown, it was like I was shown just this beautiful journey. And that, like I said, it's a sound healing ceremony, right? So that particular sound healing ceremony, they went like pretty like serious with the music and stuff. Like it wasn't as jovial like as that first ceremony. And they went, so they're conducting the music and the energy and the sound around what's kind of happening, right? Like we're co-creating, we're collaborating this experience, right? So both Erica and I, my friend, we both felt in that ceremony that we went to kind of some dark places that were like you know, collective energy, that energy of like in the world that needs healing and stuff. Like we were just taken to like kind of some heavier places. And um but I in that ceremony, what was I was shown, I feel like some aspects of like my future self, like future potential timelines that were really powerful and beautiful and incredible. I also can look at that ceremony in hindsight and where I was at that point in my life, and I can see where I was still holding a lot of illusion. And this is the interesting thing, like just doing ayahuasca is not going to save your life. It's not going to change everything in an instant. It's not going to give you all of the answers. Like the medicine is going to lead you to your highest truth, but it's up to you to see it, process, and acknowledge it, and then integrate it into your conscious mind. And, you know, at that time, I was I was not being very discerning about certain things in my life. And I think that there were energies in my life that were siphoning from me and they were distracting me. And I was interpreting their presence as meaning something different than what it actually was. And I don't really know how else to explain that, but it's like you don't know what you don't know until you know it, right? And I didn't have the awareness yet at that time to see certain things for what they really were. And so I think I was still deluding myself a little bit in that ceremony, like trying to like kind of like willfully misinterpret certain things. So, but you know, at the end of the day, my heart always just wants to love. Like that's always been my takeaway of every single ceremony is like I'm like I leave the ceremony and I'm like I love everybody. Like I love everyone that I've ever encountered. I'm just in love with life. I'm in love with love. I just want to pour this loving vibration into absolutely everything and anything that I do. And I think that like I still hadn't learned like that I can love unconditionally and I can be a force for unconditional love, but that I also have to have boundaries and protect myself and have discernment. And so I think that those were lessons that I was still working through and processing. So after that, I didn't end up doing, so that was May of 2021. I didn't end up doing ayahuasca again until December of 2022. So this is almost, I guess, a year and a half later. And a lot changed in that time in my life, in that year and a half. But I think I'm going to leave this video here and I'm going to do a part two because the next three ceremonies that I did at 2022 and 2023, um, they were really interesting and a little bit different. And I think the fact that I had had that year and a half to kind of integrate and process um, made a really big difference. So, yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, please let me know, and I will see you in part two.